Braxcast time once again. This is the 30th episode, and we've got a really massive episode. So we're going to be talking about Horseman, and this is a more mature property, 16 plus. So if you got kids, I would advise to cover their eyes and ears because we're going to get a bit brutal with this episode because we're going to be talking about the massive collection that is Horseman. But I want to go through the questions of the day first that were released before the collection came out because I like to keep up with them. Starting with the first one, what genre in comics have you always wanted to get into? And I think for me, it's superhero comics, the classic superhero comics. I like Spider-Man, Batman. Those always had an interest in me, even though I think the first comics that I really remember reading was The Walking Dead. I got into quite a few of those graphic novels. I got into the franchise of The Walking Dead in general, but when I was getting back into comics, another Image series, Invincible, I read all of that, and it really enamored me. So then, of course, with the Rippaverse, it's got a lot of, well, they're called XFs, but it's still basically superhero comics. That's what Isom basically is, even though he's not the most traditional superhero. Alpha Core is definitely close to them. I really love Alpha Core, and of course, Yaira. Yaira is more of an anti-hero, but she's extremely superpowered. So that genre where you've got superpowered beings basically interacting in a society is what interests me the most in comics. So that's my answer there. Very quick. And then the next question of the day. Which story is your favorite so far and why? So Yaira #1 is my favorite, of course. I just love the character of Yaira. I think the Saskas did a fantastic job with telling that story, giving insight into her backstory, and then it had all that cool action. And also, I mentioned reading Invincible, the setup with Yanessa and Yantoni implying, well, not basically implying, directly stating that Yaira is part of a larger alien race that's super powered. They've got intense, and there's a schism and all this stuff that's really interesting. So that's also there, and of course Magus Newmite and his character, and the fact that there could be other Newmites, and Magus is just a very high-ranking one. There's so many interesting plot points in Yaira that can be expanded upon, and that's really why I love Yaira the most. And of course, at the end of Yaira #1, you've got the reveal of Neptune. Could that be a part of her race? Could gods exist? There's just so many things that are introduced in Yaira that makes me want to dive into the Rippaverse more. It's really an intriguing story for that universe. But I think with that, those are the questions of the day. Now we are getting into the Horsemen. So we have the Horseman collection. It released Thursday morning, and I'm recording this Saturday afternoon, and we're already over $400,000 in sales for the Horseman. And we've got this really epic animated trailer. It's about a minute or so, and like a little over that. It's basically just an action scene with the main antagonist of the story, Tuna, doing a monologue about how Horseman is handing his ass to him, or killing all of his soldiers and doing that by proxy. And it's basically just a scene of him in a warehouse, just balls to the wall, just murdering everybody because Horseman is a brutal vigilante. He has no qualms about killing people, and this is a really interesting thing with any character like Horseman, the vigilantism of of a character like this. And this is what really intrigues people with comics and superhero stories. This is one of the main moral questions of Batman, that he imposes his own justice. And with Horseman, you have that moral question there, and he's acting as not only judge and jury but also executioner as well. If you're knowing that the people that Horseman is killing, they're criminals, they're bad people, they're doing terrible things in society. If society would be better off without them, and he's making that determination to get rid of them. But most people want to live under a rule of law. They don't want random people killing people, even if they are criminals. So that's where the whole moral question gets in. And of course, with the government, the state being establishing itself as having a monopoly on violence, and somebody using that against the will of the government, and those interactions that naturally happen in society is a very interesting thing. It has a lot of moral quandaries as well, and it's also really the setup for a lot of really epic action scenes. So it's really, really cool that the Rippaverse is a character like this, and it's even more cool that you've got Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett, who are top tier comic book veterans. Chuck Dixon writing in the 90s Batman, Bane, known for stuff like that. Joe Bennett did 52 for DC. He has an Immortal Hulk one that people really like, and a bunch of other stuff. And his art is fantastic. I've talked about how much I love Alpha Core #1 because of those 2-page spreads, and I have read the preview in Ripazine 2. I haven't gone through all of this. I will cover every section of this in its own episode. But one of the really cool things about the Ripazine #2 is we have a preview of the Horseman, a really short one, but it's really cool, and I really, really can't wait until fulfillment so I can really dig deeper into the story. But one of the things that we do know with this preview is that Joe Bennett is bringing his A game with those 2-page spreads back. I mean, just look at how amazing this looks. You've got just the conflict, the way it's set up, the angling and everything. Joe Bennett is such a fantastic artist, and he's giving such a great script to work with in terms of the amount of action scenes, the details, the gore you can really draw and bring out. And with a script like this, with a character like Horseman, and Chuck Dixon is really posed not only to have like these really cool action scenes, but these moral questions that are fundamental to society with the issue of vigilantism, and especially with Horsemen being willing to just straight up kill people. It makes that moral question even more relevant and poignant, as well as, just some great action scenes to really keep the reader entertained. So I'm really excited for Horsemen. Of course, the community is really excited for Horsemen as well, and rightfully so. And not only do we have the whole, comic book to really get excited for this graphic novel, we've got the possibility of an animated series. So that animated trailer was only about a little under 2 minutes or so. The video that was released with it was 6 minutes, and you have Dean Cain signing on to voice the Horseman. Of course, he doesn't really have a role. A couple of grunts. Tuna is the one who has the most amount of lines with that monologue, and I think he could have been directed a little better. So the promise for this is that if they get 5,000 members for the Rippaverse membership, and if you get into the link below, you can check out the Rippaverse website, and that'll lead you to the membership sign-up page, and you've got a whole bunch of tiers starting at $5. I've got the Ultra tier, so I get free shipping on everything, and I probably made my money back with the amount of money I spent on shipping a Rippaverse product to me. But I love all of it, and I do have the means for it, thankfully. But that's enough about me. Anyway, with 5,000 members, they'll commit to making a first episode of The Horseman, at least 10 minutes in runtime. Of course, Dean Cain will sign on to voice the Horseman, which is a really, really cool get. I think it would be a fantastic thing. And then at 10,000 members, they would make a full season. I don't think they've set a specific episode count for that. There's a full season. And for me, I've got, a couple things. Firstly, I've watched the animation a bunch of times, and then action is really, really good. So I think a lot of what needs to be really good is, I definitely think if they do even a first episode, and especially if they do a whole series, they need to get a really good team, producers, casting directors, and voice director especially, because I think Tuna's casting was good. I think he was casted well. I think he fits for that sort of character, this like kingpin-like character, this big mob boss, that's got like booze, money, and women, and has this empire of drugs or racketeering and all this stuff to fund it and build it. I think he's got a really good voice actor in that. I think he could have been directed a little better and delivered some of those last lines with a bit more passion. But other than that, I'd say it's a really, really cool thing, and I really want to see a full Horseman animated series, but only if we have the comic book canon to back it up. So at least having a 6-issue miniseries, if not like fully out, but at least announced and in the works. That's being released in tandem with the animated first season, and it's basically really lining up well with that in terms of adapting it. That's what I would want if they commit to doing a Horseman series, if the fan or if the community gets enough memberships and allows that to happen, right? Because animation isn't cheap. Comic books aren't cheap either, but they're cheaper than animation, so they need to have the ability to fund that. But I think the more important thing for me as someone who's a fan of the books is that I always want to have that source material, and that is the comics. So I think any Rippaverse show should only exist if it can be adapted from the comics. And I think one season doing a 6-issue miniseries with the Horsemen and the graphic, even though it's a graphic novel, we can consider that the first issue or the first part of Horseman's story, and then having another 5 issues that get adapted over the course of one season, I think would be a really fantastic first entry into the Rippaverse, Studios animated canon. And then you can expand everything else like that. And I've talked about methodology about doing that with doing like an Isom ill-advised movie and then launching more animated series from that. I think that's also a really cool thing. But it's really nice to see Rippaverse Studios really amping things up and having a really good roadmap for going into longer form content, because that's what the fans really want, and that's what I personally want as well. But we're about 10 minutes in, and I haven't even shown you the covers for the book. So we've got the first cover B, that was revealed to us because we had cover A revealed to us for a while. I know we had that art revealed when the book was revealed in February at MegaCon, but I'm not sure if we had the cover A revealed right then and there. It could have been a little bit later. But anyway, we've seen that first cover for a while. Ken and White did it. It looks absolutely fantastic. But cover B, Ronaldson Ferrari, or Ferrer, however you say his last name. I can't say that, but I will give him respects. He is a fantastic artist. He did the foil and embossed cover C for Gooding, the polymath, and that was a fantastic one. He knocked it out of the park there, and he did that again with cover B. I think I'll be using this one as my reading copy. And the interesting thing with Horseman is that he's got 2 costumes. I think this is definitely like he's got the first costume. You think of like Iron Man's Mark 1, and then he makes the Mark 2 and Mark 3 in the Iron Man movie. And I think there's a kind of a similar way in the comics, because I remember, you look at the old Golden Silver Age comics, you see that first Iron Man suit he makes in the cave in Iran or Iraq or wherever. You see that in the comics, and of course he eventually refines it into that iconic gold and red suit. I think Horseman's got something like that, where he kind of just becomes Horseman because he has this moral impetus to become that. And whether or not that's guided or extremely misguided, I think is something that Chuck Dixon is going to write in a way where both sides can be argued for that. And I think it's going to be the fantastic thing. But anyway, he steps into the role of the Horseman and initially has his first costume, and then he refines it into this, and then what we see in the animated little trailer there. That was really good, and Chuck Dixon actually did write that. It just works so well. I thought this was same one, but this is not. This is cover C, so this is the foiled and embossed for Horseman. They seem to stick with cover C being the special editions, with Isom 1. Cover D was like the really special edition, or because that was limited for the members, and cover C was the mass print. Isom 1 was very much a unique book, but they're settling into doing 4 covers, with cover C being that special one that's foiled and embossed. And Will Conrad, who was the interior artist for Gooding the Polymath, and he did the Dokemon cards art, is doing this cover, and this is a fantastic looking cover as well. It's simple, but it really gets the point across, and of course all of this carnage that Horseman inflicts is really, really fun to see, especially being like a fan of like Doom and just like action in general. Horseman's really right up that alley of just pure masculine action just being inflicted on the trash of Flores Park, and I absolutely love to see it. But we're going with the final cover. This is the mass print cover. Joe Bennett, who is the interior artist for Alpha Core, and of course Horseman, is doing the cover D, which is the mass print cover. And this is a retro style cover. You've got the approved by the Rippaverse Code of Ethics. You've got Horseman's little character box. You've got a bunch of lettering marked for death, but by who? Kill or be killed, and time is running out. And then this is the first appearance of the Horsemen plus Tuna, Blitz, and Sturm. I think Blitz and Sturm are the 2 characters that appear, and each have one line to Tuna as after the end of Tuna's monologue, basically complaining about how Horseman is ruining his criminal empire, right? And I think that's the really interesting thing. And if in Horseman we can see interactions between not only him and Tuna, or Tuna's, I guess, criminal underworld, or criminal empire, I should say. We'll have also Club Merc and Darren Fontana. If he spends any time in Flores Park, he's going to know about Darren Fontana and Club Merc, and he is not going to stand for it at all. So he's going to go on a murderous rampage in Club Merc, and that could lead him to meeting Isom as well and teaming up with Isom. So there's just so many ways that this can be developed into a miniseries. When you got a writer like Chuck Dixon who just knows what he's doing and he's got just such a wonderful sandbox to play with, we're going to get some really fantastic stuff. And of course, you've got Joe Bennett, fantastic artist that he is, being able to bring those scripts to life is going to be another guarantee that you're going to get a home run with this. So I'm really interested in seeing how Horseman builds the world out. I'm also just interested in seeing how this is just a standalone piece of entertainment, because like I said, I absolutely loved Alpha Core. That was a great book in terms of its writing and its art, and they're definitely not pulling any punches with this one in a very literal sense. So you've got, let's see, this book being being written by Chuck Dixon, like I said. The interior art is being done by Joe Bennett, who's penciling it, and then I think Fabio Jensen, who did the commentary for the art of Joe Bennett, is inking Joe Bennett's work, and they've apparently been longtime collaborators. And I think Jay Brown, who colored Yaira #1, is bringing his coloring work to this book as well. So I think it's going to be a really good cast of creatives working on this book, which obviously makes it very exciting to be a part of, or be a reader of, I should say. And it makes the Riververse way more interesting when you've got a character like this and you've got it being brought to life by such a fantastic team. And this is why the fans are so drawn to this, because people love the vigilantism aspect, the superheroes, and people also just like a character that is going to use violence to just do what they want. And it's a really cathartic way of going into entertainment, and that's, I think, something that is sorely missing in a lot of modern entertainment. And the Rippaverse is definitely, and a lot of comic companies and media people who make video games and all these sorts of things came about because the legacy institutions, the big corporations, were not making entertainment for the fans and the general people who wanted to be entertained. They're making it for completely different reasons. But the Rebelverse just want to make content that's for the fans, that's for people who want to be entertained. And a character like Horseman has just got so much going for him in terms of being able to bring that classic ethos to what a vigilante superhero is like. That's why people love Batman so much. And this is a character who's going to be much more intense than Batman, because he's going to have no moral qualms about killing, which again puts the vigilante aspect of his character even more into the forefront than it is for a character like Batman. And of course, Chuck Dixon having written Batman, I really am expecting to see like the vigilantism of Horsemen and how people react to that be a center part of, if not this book, definitely for his character going forward. So it's going to be really interesting to see the setup that we get for Horsemen in this book. And it's going to be even more interesting because the fans have responded really well to this collection. Making over, I think, like $200,000 in the first day. It was insane to see how much the fans were responding to this. And of course, beforehand, everyone was really hyped for this character, really liked the idea of it. And of course, once the collection came out, the fans, put their money where their mouth was and said, "We like this book. We like the idea of this." And just seeing how that develops further, and of course, that happening in tandem with the other characters of the Rippaverse as well is really interesting. I do think he'll have some run-ins with Bloodroof, because on the site, his character page was described as him having a run-in with a certain castle. I'm not sure if I remember seeing that. I think Creative WM Personal told me that I was looking up at that, and I think that was something that was there. So if he has any run-ins with Bloodroof, that'll be a really interesting thing. Of course, I think that can be something that happens after the events of this book, and it's just an interesting tidbit. And of course, the fact that he's got a family life and his life as a horseman is going to be a really interesting thing as well. So there's a lot of dynamics that Horseman is going to have. The dynamic with him and his family, with him and the people he kills, and then with him and the society that he's trying to protect from these criminals, right? So all of that is really going to merge and meld together in a really wonderful way, provided that the script is a competent one, and Chuck Dixon is very much above the level of being a competent writer. He's a masterclass writer, so I really fully expect this to have that punch not only in like the art department, but just the writing as well. And then it's just going to really enrich the world of the Rippaverse. And that's really what I love the Rippaverse, that whole universe aspect, which is why I'm really drawn to a character like the Horseman. But I think with that, I have rambled on far too much, or maybe just enough, depending on what your perspective is for this episode. Horseman, I'm going to keep hyping it up when it really, as we get closer to release, it's going to fulfill approximately in November. But don't worry, I will keep hyping it up. I will keep um, on the news if the early fulfillment starts. And of course, I will be reviewing it. And of course, as the episodes of Braxcast keeps coming out, I will be, mentioning it time and time again as a way to just help us, well, not help establish, but help commentate on the on the world of the Rippaverse that is being built book by book. But I think, like I said, rambled on far enough. If you made it to the end, thank you so much, and thank you for watching the Braxcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.